Hey everyone, and welcome to my Saw video. This is the last one in my guide series. Finally, we are there. This is the last character that I have not done a guide for. So if you do have any other characters you want to see a guide for, well, you can find them down in my channel down below. But it's been a long road, and thank you for your patience, but we're finally there. Here is my guide to the Saw. As always, if you do enjoy the video, please consider tossing it a like and subscribing. Also, check out any of my other videos down below. I also stream regularly on Twitch, twitch.tv/ManageRequest, every Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday. So come hang out and always talk Saw there, or any other Gloomhaven questions or Frosthaven questions. Always down for talking Gloomhaven and Frosthaven over on Twitch. Okay, well, I think I've left you all waiting long enough anyway, so let's get into the Saw Bones. So the Saw, also known as Sawbones, is a combat medic style of character and is a bit of a kind of mixed bag, really. He has his fans, but he also definitely has his haters, because on one hand, it can be quite powerful when played well, and he does have access to a very large, powerful suite of cards, especially at max level. But on the other, he can sometimes feel a bit underwhelming, especially when it comes to his actual unique mechanic and the thing that Sawbones does differently than everybody else. Sawbones' unique mechanic is the ability to hand out medical card packs to players, which they can then use as a card in a future round. These come in two different sizes. You can get the regular size, you can get a large size, and they have heal actions both on the top and bottom, but they can also be played for just the default move 2 or the default attack 2. However, you cannot use these med packs to mitigate damage. As soon as they are played, they are essentially used and they go back to the med pack card supply of the Sawbones. So you can't really pull any shenanigans here with burning cards to damage using them. You are going to have to end up playing them basically to actually get them out of your hands. So they will be played some point during the game. What this does is this allows Sawbones to preemptively give a character a heal that they can then use when they want, when it's convenient for them to use. This can be quite good because at the start of a room, perhaps you don't need to actually heal a character immediately as soon as you enter, but giving them a health pack, that means that later on during the room, perhaps they can find a time where it's convenient for them to do it. But also the thing that this does is it gives that player an additional card to play before they would need to rest or even maybe exhaust towards the end of a scenario. So this can be quite powerful when used with characters with small hand sizes who potentially might struggle, or if they like to burn a lot of cards. So certain characters may need to or have to burn a lot of cards, and this just gives them a little bit of extra life. And if you've got a character who's got an odd size number of cards as well, that's actually one additional round per med pack that you can give them in the early game. So that can actually add up, and that can be a decent amount of value there. And this really is where the kind of trade-off and the power level potentially of this character kind of gets a little bit kind of confusing, or perhaps not so straightforward. The action of giving a med pack to somebody, that costs you, the Sawbones, an action. And the action to play a med pack is also an action from another player. So the actual heal value that you get from these cards is pretty underwhelming. If you were to say, hey, it's going to cost you 2 actions to be able to do a heal 4, then, well, you're probably not going to really get behind that. And that is a bit of a problem with the heal pack action. And it's why a lot of people will probably immediately think, well, hang on, this doesn't feel particularly great. However, the real power is in this extension of the exhaustion for you. It really does help this character have some additional stamina and can help them go for a little bit longer. And that can be very powerful and can certainly help characters that perhaps they have a bad few rounds, perhaps they end up having to burn one of their own cards to damage because they get unlucky or they get themselves in a bad situation. This can then be used to be able to stop that, or to basically rebound a little bit from those problems. I also find in general that the med packs are a little bit more useful towards the end of a room when there's no enemies left on the board. It's not really the kind of thing you want to be playing in the thick of it. So most of the time people use these towards the end of the room just to either move towards the door or heal themselves up a little bit before the next room. They're not generally used mid-fight, I've found. Unless, of course, you just need to use them for a bit of a move 2 or something like that. I think this value of having an extra card to play is often missed or just not really picked up on by a lot of players. And that's why probably people don't really jive very well with this character. It's fairly low impact, and actually the value that it's adding is, you know, kind of hidden really. It's not obvious, and in certain party comps the value that it might add might be even smaller, because if you have a bunch of mercenaries with very large hand sizes, then perhaps it's like, oh, I've got an extra card, whatever, it doesn't really matter, and perhaps you're getting towards the end of a scenario and you've still got loads of excess cards in hand. So it's a little bit awkward at times to really judge this, and unless maybe you have a very good grasp mechanically on what's going on in the game, or if you're playing solo and you're actually managing multiple mercenaries at the same time, when you can actually start to really appreciate what this can actually do for your team. But it isn't a obviously powerful mechanic. It's fairly low impact, and I think that's why this character often gets a bad rep. Thankfully though, this is not all this character is good at, and the combat side of this character is actually quite powerful and rewarding. If you'd like to play a healer but are quite tired of being passive, stuck in the back line, then this character has some big play potential and likes to get stuck in the front lines. Sawbones also does have access to a lot of just standard heals too, so just standard card heals. You are actually one of the best healers in the game through the variety of different things that you can do. However, damage is always going to trump healing in Gloomhaven for efficiency purposes. It's always better to try and kill an enemy than it is to let them hit you and then you heal up, right? The exhaustion mechanic in Gloomhaven is always encouraging players to try and finish enemies quicker, complete scenarios quicker, because that is your clock. That clock is ticking. And if you run out of cards, then you lose, and the enemy cannot run out of cards. So it's always better to try and do damage and kill something than it is to maybe sit there and heal. There's a few corner cases of a few situations where that might not be the case, but 99% of the time, that's going to be what you're going to be trying to do. So in this particular build, we are going to be focusing a little bit more on the combat side of the combat medic, but this character does have a decent amount of flexibility, I would say, that can actually be tailored to your team or the scenario a little bit more, and it has some good combos with some other characters. There's some powerful stuff that this character can do to enable other characters. Each level up decision is not always necessarily straightforward, so I think this is quite a good character for that purpose. And yeah, we're going to be focusing mainly on the combat side, but absolutely, I think you need to keep some of these starting things in mind. So let's go over the starting cards for this character. So we've got all of the starting cards here on the left. Unfortunately, because of the patch in Gloomhaven Digital, and they haven't updated this version because I'm on the open beta version, I can only show you the level 1 cards at the level 2 screen. It's a little bit funky. I hope that they patch that back out into Guildmaster soon. I think in the campaign that has been patched, but it's not been patched here because I'm in the old version of the client here. So hopefully that won't be the case when we come to do this in the future. But if we look at the top cards, so first off, we have First Aid. So this is give one adjacent ally 1 medical pack ability card, 1 XP. It is 8 initiative and it is a move 4. This is a decent card. This is definitely your best and, well, your only card to give medical packs really at level 1. The 8 initiative is very nice because then you can actually give the med pack nice and early and then move away if you wanted to. So you can always catch an ally perhaps before they run away or something like that. Always quite good to have low initiative paired with a good amount of move on the bottom. That's going to help you do hopefully a very powerful top at some point later on. But First Aid, it's just a very solid card. You definitely want to be giving out med packs. Whether or not you want to give them out immediately at the start of the round, maybe not, but it is definitely something that you want to be doing. And yeah, this is just a solid card, a hallmark staple card for this character that's going to stick around for quite some time. Next, we have Hand of the Surgeon, which is an attack 4 with 1 XP on the top. That is a decent, solid attack for level 1. Attack 4 with no kind of caveats, and the fact that it is an XP as well at the same time. Not too shabby. You're definitely wouldn't say no to that. Decent attack. Then you've got on the bottom, you've got all your heal actions of this round affect you and all adjacent allies, and that's 62 initiative. Now the bottom here is quite good. Obviously we haven't seen any proper heal cards yet, but they are coming up, and this has some situational use. With a lot of what Sawbones does, it's going to depend on the way you play or your party composition or even the number of mercenaries that you have in your party. If you're playing 2-player, then the bottom of this card does absolutely nothing unless you have summons or something else kind of going on. There is a few instances where this character can fall flat in certain party comps and this thing, but this is just a nice thing to have in your back pocket if you need it. And to be honest, the top more than carries the card at level 1, so you're not going to be too worried about that. Next up, we have Hold Back the Pain, which is a heal 3 ranged 1 with 1 XP. This is a good card to use maybe with the bottom of Hand of the Surgeon if you want. That range 1 on this does make it a little bit awkward, and this is a reoccurring feature of this character. You are a combat medic, which means you need to be in the front lines alongside your tank or with your other mercenaries, your other melee mercenaries that you're playing with. So that does mean that your range on your heals is capped at 1. And that can be a little bit of an issue for this character. Trying to effectively heal sometimes can be a bit tricky because either you're blocked by an obstacle or a trap, or you just don't have enough movement. There are lots of things that can happen, or you're blocked by an enemy. There are lots of things that can happen, right? Between you being able to actually get to your ally to be able to do that heal. And that range 1 does make it a little bit awkward, but this character thematically is supposed to be in there. So it makes sense from a theme perspective, but mechanically, sometimes it can be hard to make this work. What is quite cool with this card, though, is the bottom. So all of your melee attacks this round will target all adjacent enemies. So it turns your single target melee attack potentially into a target all adjacent enemies. And that can be very, very strong. 57 initiative, though, is not great, so you're hopefully going to pair this with a better initiative if you want to do that. It's a very powerful effect, and it's going to be even more powerful depending on obviously what kind of card that you can combo it with, and we'll be coming up to a card that we can combo with it at level 1, which is pretty strong. Hold Back the Pain is a solid card all round, bit of healing, and also a way for you maybe to get some extra value out of a melee attack, which we'll get into. Next, we have Booster Shot, which is heal 4, range 1. 42 initiative, and the bottom is place this card in one adjacent ally's active area and treat it as if they own the card, and they get shield 1, 2 XP. Heal 4, range 1. I think that is pretty well balanced. It's obviously better than Hold Back the Pain, but it's missing that experience point, which is a bit of a shame. But that is a good size heal, especially at level 1, just to give to somebody. There's a bit of a downside with the range 1, but it's a good amount of heal. Now, the bottom is an interesting effect because just giving an ally shield is obviously going to be very, very powerful if you have certain characters in your party. There are some combos of characters that this is kind of a little bit broken with because you can just chuck so much shield on certain characters that they almost become invulnerable and they're just walking around, and it's very hard for them to take damage unless the enemy has Pierce. There is definitely some cool things you can do here, and if you're playing with certain characters who may have other stacking shield abilities, I'm not going to spoil anything here by mentioning anyone, but if you have other characters in your party that have other stacking shields, you can stack another shield, and this can get kind of a bit crazy and out of hand. Booster Shot is one of those kind of cards where I think the top is decent. Definitely a good size heal for level 1. The bottom is potentially broken in the right sort of set of situations. And also it's just 2 XP to give to you, but it is quite powerful to just give an ally a shield. Bloody Saw is an attack 3 wound with 1 XP, 25 initiative, and the bottom is a straight loot 1. Now this is the card I was alluding to with Hold Back the Pain. This could be a very good one to combo with this. Just being able to wound several things and do an attack 3 wound on several things is obviously really good value. 25 initiative as well, if you were to use this as your leading initiative, is not bad. It's not amazing, but it's not bad. And against certain enemies, you will probably end up going first. A good level 1 attack, definitely, on a decent-ish initiative. The loot 1 on the bottom is a little bit meh, but it's necessary to have loot cards, so it's not a bad loot card by any means. At least you've got a very, very usable top alongside that loot action. So next we have Curative Mixture, which is heal 3, range 1, remove all negative conditions on the healed target for 1 XP. Now this is an interesting one because the heal happens before the remove the negative conditions. So if the negative conditions were poison or wound, well, the heal is going to remove them before that kind of happens. Which, if it's wound, that doesn't really matter. But really, specifically, it's poison that's the issue here. It doesn't remove poison in a clean way. Could remove things like muddle, immobilize. That's a pretty bad one. Disarm and stun, obviously, very, very bad. So being able to remove those, I would argue that you should probably never get yourself into a situation where you're very regularly either stunned or disarmed. But sometimes you're playing against shamans and they just draw their disarm and there's nothing you can do about it. So this could help you mitigate that. The heal 3 is okay. 1 XP. It's 19 initiative, which is decent initiative for a heal. Not too bad. So I like this card. I think it's fine. I don't think it's anything crazy. I really wish that the remove negative conditions was above the heal, just so you could get rid of that poison first. I think that would set this a little bit above maybe the card, and I don't think it would necessarily make it broken, but I can understand why they've done it. They just don't want poison to be able to be circumvented by this card. So makes sense to me. Curative Mixture is a decent heal. The bottom is move 3, remove all negative conditions on any one adjacent ally. So we can do the same kind of thing again, just without the heal. I actually quite like the bottom of this card a little bit more than the top. Just being able to get that little bit of extra value off of a move potentially can be quite nice, especially if your ally's just been muddled or wounded or something, or they're poisoned, right? This is just a nice clean way for you to remove it. Definitely the bottom is much, much better at removing poison. That's really what you want to be using for getting rid of poison. If it's wound, then you could argue that the top is still better because then you can be able to get that heal off as well. This is a really nice way to be able to just get rid of just an annoying condition on an ally. And I like this card. I think it's a good sort of role player type card. It fits nicely with this character and what they can do. And it's useful. Both sides of it are useful. Next, we have Syringe, which is on the top. Shield 2, target 1 adjacent allied mercenary. Quite nice. Nothing too crazy to write home here, but Shield 2 is a decent amount of shield, so it's a buff for a single round. It's not bad at all. 15 initiative as well is not maybe as early as you would like this, but it's not bad by any means. It's still early and will probably go underneath most enemies, but there are some enemies that will potentially go underneath it, or some cards that will go underneath it. The bottom, though, is really where this card's at, and I think this is what a lot of people end up playing the card for, which is attack 1, poison, and stun. Yep, that's an attack on the bottom of a card that is an attack 1, poison, stun. So you do need to be in the right place before you get to do this, which will be coming up to a card which won't make that too difficult, but we definitely have a nice little combo with this character in which we're going to try and get stuck in. So the attack 1, poison, stun is just a great way of taking an enemy out for the round on 15 initiative, but also getting that poison on them then means that if you wanted to do a top attack on them, so let's say you wanted to do Syringe into Bloody Sore, you're then suddenly turning your Bloody Sore into an attack 4 with wound, and then the enemy's going to have stun, poison, and wound on them, and that is pretty insane value, right? That's really going to add up, and that enemy's going to die pretty quickly. So that wound and that poison, that's really going to start doing some work for you. Syringe is a super powerful bottom effect, not one to be slept on at all, and you certainly want to be probably using Syringe for the bottom much more than the top, and making sure you're getting yourself in a position so that on the next round you can use Syringe in a effective way. Next, we have a card that we are not going to be taking with us, which is Battlefield Medicine. This is give 1 adjacent ally 1 large medical pack ability card, 2 XP, and a burn. For me, the large medical packs just aren't really worth it. Not for the burns, at least, anyway. Burning a card just to give a person a slightly bigger heal, a slightly better initiative, and it's not hugely better initiative, it's not hugely better heal, for me it's just a bit mediocre. I don't think that this really adds up to being worth a burn effect, in my opinion. You're going to go down to 9 cards yourself. You've given somebody an extra card, so that can kind of help them out. But you're not giving them a great card. And then what's worse is that maybe if you were to give them that card and then they're looking down and they go, oh, actually, I'm just going to use this large med pack as a move too. And that just feels really rough as a Sawbones to have somebody do that. You've burnt a card to basically give somebody a move 2 action on a future turn. And that is unfortunately not worth it. So for me, the large medical packs in general are just unplayable. The bottom is you and all allies are immune to all negative conditions this round. Wow, an aura effect on 83 initiative. Just not good. Just not good. You can't sugarcoat this in any way. This really needs to be on a very early initiative card to even be chance of being playable, because otherwise, you are now having to pair this with another early initiative to then be able to make sure that this aura will happen for the entire round. There's no point you playing an aura on 83. So, unfortunately, this card is just 2 bad halves of a card. So, unfortunately, it's a very easy one for us to leave on the sideboard. So, next up, we have Triage, which is once during each of our next 4 turns, perform a heal 2 range 1 action. Not terrible here. We can earn up to 2 XP as well by doing this. Not terrible, but the thing is that is this heal 2 always going to be useful over the next 4 turns? And I think on balance, probably not. If, for example, I mean, this is heal 8, right? If you were to look at it from that perspective, it's heal 8 over the course of 4 turns, which is just a decent amount of heal and worthy of a burn if you were to just say heal 8. The problem is it's only range 1, which means you're going to have to be adjacent, which may mean that you end up having to move inefficiently, or you might not be able to play very freely because you're going to end up losing charges because you don't want to do that. You want to go over here and deal with a different enemy. There's just never a really great time to play the top of triage, and that's the problem, I think, with it. It's 53 initiative, and the bottom is move 5, so that's good, though. So that's why this card kind of makes the cut here. It's because the top is okay. You can burn it towards the end of a scenario to get a little bit of extra XP, definitely, and maybe get a bit of value out of it. But the move 5 is really why this card is here. 53 initiative is obviously a little bit awkward. It would be nice if this was a bit earlier, but not too much of a problem because we're going to be coming up to a card that we're going to play with this very soon that we're going to be quite happy with using the initiative on the other card. Next up is mobile response. At the start of each of your turns, remove one negative condition from any one of your allies. This is 2 XP and it is a burn. This again is fairly situational. In certain scenarios, this can be quite nice, especially if somebody keeps getting disarmed or stunned or something like that. But again, this is a card that I think makes up for suboptimal play in a way, right? This is a way that, you know, you should be able to deal with negative conditions and be able to handle them through other means at your disposal. It does maybe have a place in certain scenarios. I will say certain scenarios, it could be useful, but is it going to be more useful than your other cards? I'm not so sure. Also, this card, as we're coming up to, is a double burn. It's never great to have a double burn. The bottom here is move 5, wound, target all adjacent enemies, 1 XP, and is that burn again. Good amount of move, and wounding a load of enemies is definitely good value. But it's burning a load of cards just to move 5 and wound. It's not really worth it. We only have 10 cards. We don't have a huge amount of cards as this character. We're on the middle kind of section here. We don't have the most. We don't have the least. We're kind of in that middle area. So you want your burn cards to do something fairly impactful. You can afford to burn a couple of cards and just don't think that this is impactful enough to really warrant burning. I just don't think it quite makes the cut because both halves are a little bit underwhelming and are not cards that you maybe necessarily want to burn immediately. Maybe the top might be something you'd want to burn immediately, but it's just a little bit awkward. Next, we have Prevention is Key, which is one of our best cards, and this will be a card that you'll be very, very happy to have at all times. This is a hallmark card for this character for sure, and the card that I was alluding to. If you want to play with Triage bottom, you probably want to play Prevention is Key top on the 13 initiative, and it is disarm, target all adjacent enemies, and that is insane. That is so good. If anyone's played the Scoundrel and you've managed to get yourself all the way up to level 9 and you're playing with Long Con, you can understand how great that card is and why that card is so good. This is Long Con at level 1 without the attack. And yes, the attack on Long Con is good, but to be honest, one of the main reasons you play it is because of that disarm. This is insanely good, insanely powerful, and definitely something that you want to be using very, very regularly. Definitely a card that is going to be stamina potioned back a lot by this character. So you're going to want to keep playing this over and over and over again. S tier card, amazing card. So Prevention is Key is definitely one you want to keep your eye on. The only shame here is we don't get any XP, which is probably because, wow, it's so powerful. We shouldn't really get an XP for it because we just want to play this card over and over and over and over and over again. 13 initiative as well, as we said before, it helps you do this nice and early, actually get it done, which is the other problem. Moving in, making sure you get to actually do it. 13 initiative is going to be good enough to do it. The bottom is Shield 1. Aura affects self and all adjacent allies. Ignore the bottom of this card. You will probably never play the bottom of this card unless maybe in the last room or something like that in some weird corner case. The top of the card is where this is at. Prevention is Key is excellent and your best level 1 card easily. Next up, we have Teamwork, which is you and all adjacent allies may recover an amount of discarded cards up to the number of allies adjacent to you. This is another card we're not taking, and it's because we have another top burn here, which is just really not worth it. This scales, obviously, with the number of players that you have. So if you are playing 4-player, this could actually end up being a little bit better. But I still don't think it is great. It's kind of one of those kind of effects where can kind of be broken in certain ways. Obviously, if you've got other characters who have very powerful cards that you can give them back, then yeah, this could be great. And it certainly would be one of those kind of cards that if you are looking to combo things off, it's a bit of an enabler for other characters and for yourself, because you also get to recover some cards back. Good way to get back Prevention is Key, for example. So in sort of certain spots, this card can be very strong and can be very good. But I would say, like, if you're just playing an average party and you're just playing the game fairly honestly and you're just trying to have the most impact with all of your turns, I don't know whether or not the top of Teamwork really does it. It definitely has a spot and there is some secret power level there, so I don't think you should dismiss it immediately, because just getting back cards is always going to be good, especially if somebody can get back 3 or even 4 cards. As well as it says adjacent allies, so if you have summons, this can get back loads of cards if you have lots of summons, so also another thing to keep in mind. 89 initiative is not great, but this is the kind of effect that you would expect to see on an 89 initiative card because you want to probably get back the cards you played that round. And the bottom is all adjacent allies may perform a move 2 action, and then you get to move 2. Can be quite good again for summons. I think this is kind of like maybe the summons combo card, because being able to move those summons is actually pretty decent because they can sometimes get stuck and not be making progress through the scenario at a fast enough rate, and this can actually help them a little bit. You can actually get in there. It is only adjacent allies though, so again, it's not going to be amazing in certain spots and with certain player comps. The move 2 on the bottom is okay for you, but that's just a default move 2. So yeah, this card is just a bit too situational, I think, which is why it ends up on the bench for us. And lastly, we have Vaccine, which is attack 1, range 3 with poison, a little 3-hex AoE there, 1 XP. Just a nice level 1 attack. Poison, hopefully 3 enemies, get a little attack in there too. You're not complaining. Good value level 1 attack and an AoE attack. Maybe something that you'd want to use with Eagle Eye Goggles, or perhaps something you'd want to use with a power potion. This character does have the ability to do some big AoEs because of the back of Hold Back the Pain, because of the bottom of Hold Back the Pain. You actually have some options here to be able to attack multiple things in a single turn. So power potions, Eagle Eye Goggles, things like that are actually items that you can consider with this character, and Vaccine's not a bad use of that at all. The bottom is place this card in one adjacent ally's active area and treat it as if they own the card. So similar to the shield one. However, this one says you are immune to all negative conditions. So immunity to negative conditions. This is not as good as the shield, I will say. The shield is probably the best use of the set, or at least the most generically good one of these. This, though, with certain characters, can be very strong. I'm not going to spoil, again, I try not to spoil in these videos any of the other unlockables because I'm aware that people might just be watching this video. But there are certain characters who, or certain abilities that characters have that will apply, negative conditions to themselves for them to then have very good positive turns themselves. Maybe there's a bit of a drawback, like they have to hurt themselves, but then they actually get something really, really good in return. And this can basically stop those negative conditions from ever being applied. Again, quite situationally, very, very good with certain combinations of characters. But I think the top of Vaccine is just a good, reliable enough attack, and it's good value at level 1. Get some good poison going. It's going to help your team out a lot anyway. So the card easily makes the cut because of the top, but the bottom has that sort of potential. And also you could just burn it for 2 XP to an ally towards the end of a scenario just to keep leveling up as well. So let's get into the leveling up. So level 2, we have Hamstring or Precaution. So Hamstring is attack 4, immobilize 1 XP, 62 initiative, and the bottom is move 6, immobilize self. Hamstring is just one of those cards that just offers 2 halves of great value. Attack 4 with immobilize 1 XP is good. The 62 initiative does make the top a little bit more tricky, I will say. But being able to maybe immobilize an enemy, then move away to protect yourself is useful in a lot of situations. And it's a good size attack too for 1 XP. So the top of Hamstring is just a good value attack and a useful kind of control piece to have in your toolbox if maybe you need to use it. But the bottom here is really where this card shines for me. Move 6 with immobilize self. Move 6 is just get wherever you like, and then you just immobilize yourself. But the key with this thing is that we don't want this immobilize to be a downside for this character. We have lots of ways that we can interact with the enemies without moving. When we look at things like Syringe, this is a bottom card where we don't want to move, right? Prevention is key. This is a way that we can disarm enemies, so we don't necessarily care about being next to enemies. So really what we want to do with Hamstring is we want to turn this immobilized self into not really that much of a downside. The bottom is by far my favorite part of this card, but I think the top also offers you a nice little attack and some toolbox control. Next we have Precaution, which is another fairly decent card here. So we have Shield 1, affect all allies on the top. Nothing crazy, but there is no range to this, so this will just shield everything for 1. Quite nice if you've got a very big room. Maybe you're struggling to get this adjacency stuff going. Perhaps you're struggling with your heals and your range. It's not bad, as well as if you're lagging behind your team, it's at least something that you can do to contribute. If they've gone into the next room and you're really far behind, at least this is something that you can play to contribute that round into helping your team out a little bit. The 9 initiative is also great. That's what you want, a low initiative on a round effect like the top of this. And the bottom is a good way for us to get medical packs. So it's another medical pack card. Our second one here is give one adjacent ally one medical pack ability card, 1 XP. This means as well, with this card, we can actually give somebody or 2 different people, we can get out 2 medical packs in a single round if we use first aid. Probably don't want to be using your 8 initiative and your 9 initiative together, but this actually can work okay. I've done this a few times just to be able to really stock a character up. Here, have 2 cards. That's 1 full round that I've given you now in medical pack cards. Or ultimately, you can just give these cards out to 2 different people as well. That's another thing that you can do. So you can now do the double kind of medical pack turn as long as you are in the right place. So make sure that you position yourself so that you are in the right place to begin the round. I think level 2 is actually quite a difficult decision because I think both of these cards are actually pretty decent. We're going to go with Hamstring as our first card because we are leaning more towards the combat side of things. But absolutely, I can see you also taking Precaution here. And we may, spoiler alert, we may be coming back for Precaution at a later date. So at level 2, though, we're taking Hamstring. So the card we're going to be taking out here is Triage. Mainly because this is a like-for-like change here. We're changing, a move 5 here into a move 6. We're getting a more usable top, I would say, with the top of Hamstring as well. Triage top, as I said before, has some uses, but it's not going to always be useful. Yes, we are now immobilizing ourselves, so that is something that you need to consider. We will be hurting ourselves a little bit, but I don't think really that is too much of a downside. Like I said before, realistically, you're going to be using Hamstring to position your Prevention is Key, and then you're okay to just sit there and then maybe do like Syringe, for example, on another enemy, or potentially you can go straight into a Hold Back the Pain into Bloody Sword combination in the future turn. So really, this character wants to move a lot with Hamstring, get themselves into a position to use Prevention is Key. Then you're going to be wanting to use Hold Back the Pain and Bloody Sword, or potentially Syringe, plus something else as well, plus maybe even Bloody Sword there. So you've got these options sort of available to you so that you actually can quite comfortably with this character take a turn where you don't need to move. And that's really why Hamstring is so good, because really the immobilized self isn't too much of a downside a lot of the time. Okay, on to level 3. So at level 3, we have Regenerative Tissue and we have Vital Strike. So Regenerative Tissue, try and say that fast, is Heal 5 Self, 1 XP, 46 Initiative. At the bottom is place this card in one adjacent ally's active area and treat as if they own the card, so similar to the ones we've seen before. At the start of each of their turns, they get a heal 1 self action. Similar to some other characters in certain ways, but this basically just gives that character a heal 1. Why is this good? Well, this is good because it can remove things like poison every single round for them. It can remove wound for them every single round. And it's just going to add up and it can offset damage across the entire scenario. So not a bad bottom here. I'd actually say this bottom is it's pretty decent. The top heal 5 self is a bit awkward, I would say, mainly because you don't always care about healing yourself. This character definitely does get hit. You definitely get yourself into the trenches, and sometimes just because of your low initiatives, you can become the focus quite easily, or if there's like target 2s, for example, you're generally in the front line of battle. However, you've got booster shot here, which you could use either on yourself or on an ally, and this is 46 initiative and this is 42, so very much for muchness, very similar. So I don't really think that the top of Regenerative Tissue is really worth it for what it is, considering that we have a card that kind of does the same thing already available to us. And the bottom, I think, is probably a little bit too situational. It's good, no doubt, but again, you're burning cards. You have to be a little bit careful. You've only got 10 cards, so you're going to have to choose these. And I think I would probably actually prefer having the shield one, like booster shot, most of the time. Like if you're getting attacked 3 times, booster shot with the shield one could stop 3 damage, whereas Regenerative Tissue would only heal 1 health. So booster shot can be considered to be better in most ways to Regenerative Tissue, in my opinion. So in that case, I don't think we're going to be taking this card. Vital Strike is an attack 2 with 2 XP, and it is a burn. That is a big attack, but it is a burn. It's also a really good attack, potentially, to use with the bottom of Hold Back the Pain. Attack 7 on many things. Yes, please. That could be very strong. And I think that's probably why this has ended up being a burn, is because there is some huge combo potential with it. However, big burn attacks, unless they target things, everything themselves, right? Unless there's some sort of big AoE where they actually do that all within itself, I don't really rate. So the fact that you have to use Vital Strike with Hold Back the Pain to get any value out of it, really, or at least worthwhile value out of it, I think is a bit of a knock against the card. The bottom is move 4, which is good, but not really enough to redeem a top burn. So this is the situation where I was talking about where you might consider going back and actually taking precaution. And in this case, I am actually going to go back and I'm going to take precaution because I think I would much rather just have a 9 initiative available to me as well, even though potentially we might just not be using this for the med packs or for the top. Just having a 9 initiative for a move 2 or an attack 2 default action is not bad. It's not bad by any means. So being able to get med packs out quickly in a single turn by using both of these together can be quite nice as well. You want to be able to give med packs out. I know that that's not a popular mechanic, but it certainly is something that can be very useful for your team. So we're going to go back and we're going to take precaution here. So we have a couple of options for cards that we could take out here. We could take out either Booster Shot, we could take out Vaccine. It really is going to come down to probably your party. If you are using the bottom of Booster Shot regularly because you are chucking that on your tank, because you do have a main tank in your party, then I think you probably want to keep Booster Shot in. If not, however, then maybe you take that out and maybe you keep Vaccine in, or maybe you take Vaccine out. Vaccine, the top is good, but maybe it wanes a little bit because once you start getting shield and stuff, it's basically just poisoning 3 things, which is not amazing. You do have a fairly decent modifier deck on this character though. So I'm actually going to be taking out Vaccine here because I'm going to go on the principle that we're probably going to be using the bottom of this. So I'm going to be taking out Vaccine, but to be honest here, either of these two is a fine option depending on your party. Okay, on to level 4. So at level 4, we have Blood Transfusion and we have Do No Harm. So Blood Transfusion is heal 7, affect 1 adjacent ally. We have to suffer 2 damage and we get 1 XP. So thematically, very cool card. We are kind of giving blood to the other ally for them to continue going. The 2 damage is a little bit of an annoying downside because there might be certain situations where you don't have 2 life. So you'd have to burn a card or you wouldn't ever want to play this. So there is some corner cases where Blood Transfusion is just unplayable, and that is a bit of an issue for the card. 7 is a decent amount of heal though, and again, if you combo this well with some of the other cards that you have, so for example, being able to target everybody with Hand of the Surgeon, then this could be a huge heal. As I discussed in the intro though, healing is never going to be as good as just doing damage, generally speaking. The bottom is attack 3, heal 2, affect all adjacent allies again. So it's a bottom attack, which is always nice to see. Good with hamstring, right? We run in with hamstring, so we don't want to move. So it gives us another potential bottom card to use while we're immobilized, which is nice. And the heal 2 is just a nice little thing tacked on the end there. I think the bottom of this card is actually pretty decent. 52 initiative does hurt the card in general because it's all that no man's land initiative where you really don't know what the scenario is going to look like at 52 initiative. It's very difficult for you to be able to tell where enemies are going to be right in the middle of the order. So I think this card is just kind of okay. I think the bottom is definitely the more powerful thing with the card. The top is some nice utility though if you really needed to heal somebody and you wanted to, someone has a really bad round. So I think this card is just okay. Is it worthy of a level 4? I'm not so sure. I think probably not. The next card though is Do No Harm, which is kill 1 adjacent normal or elite enemy, disarm and immobilize self for 2 XP. That is a pretty decent burn. Just kill a normal or elite at level 4. Every single character in Gloomhaven gets access to some version of this effect. Some version of kill an enemy. Sometimes it's just normal, sometimes it's conditional, sometimes it's unconditional. Well, this one is unconditional, but we have a very real downside here, which is that we disarm and we immobilize ourselves. We get the 2 XP and it is a burn. So, but this top is so good for just eliminating a really annoying elite. So certain elites are just basically like mini bosses. You know, Harrowers can be just super annoying. Very high level flame demons because they have lots of retaliate. They have lots of shields, so they can be really annoying to have to try and kill. Even down to stuff like elite living spirits that can just curse you, attack everybody. There's a lot of elite enemies that are almost like mini bosses that killing them will just make the scenario a breeze. And this character, as we said before, can facilitate a couple of burns. So this gives you a card where you could burn it early in the scenario, late in the scenario, but it's very versatile. So I like Do No Harm top. I think it's nice, and it's probably one of the better but it's definitely one of the better versions of this effect because of the elite enemy claws that it has. 76 initiative is not great, so not very good for the top really. You probably want to go early and kill it before it gets to act. And the bottom is move 4, heal 3, range 1. Now this is actually sneaky very, very good. Being able to move and heal in a single action is just additional value on top. At the moment, we've probably had to choose between the two. Do we want to move or do we want to heal? Do we want to do this or do we want to do that? Well, now we can move, heal, and we can still do a impactful top action at the same time. And that for me is what really sets Do No Harm over the top. You've got a really good top action here that can just get rid of a troublesome enemy. But on the bottom, you've got an action that actually just adds together and combines two actions that you're always going to be happy to do, really. Really, really like this. This is also a fantastic enhancement target as well, the bomb here for strengthen. Definitely something that you want to keep an eye on if you can get a lot of cold. Do No Harm, excellent. Really, really like it. So we're going to be picking Do No Harm. Okay, so the card that I think you can get rid of here is really you can go back and get rid of maybe Booster Shot if you didn't already, or Vaccine if you didn't already. I think those are absolutely fine. I like getting rid of Booster Shot here because having to use the top action to heal something never feels great. And now we've got that combined on the bottom here, which I think is really good. We also don't really want to give up some of our early initiatives for these kinds of things. So this actually works really well in our favor. So I'm just going to account for what I think makes this character the best. And I think Do No Harm is definitely better than Booster Shot for us and us to being able to be active and be out there doing the best combat medic stuff that we can do. Okay, on to level 5. So at level 5, we have Research the Cure and we have Amputate. So Research the Cure is attack 4, remove all negative conditions on all adjacent allies. This is nice. We liked Do No Harm before. We liked it because Do No Harm added a heal to a move. Well, this is adding a extra kind of little bit of value to an attack action, right? Removing all negative conditions. Not always going to be useful, but an attack 4 is decent regardless, and now we're getting a little bit of upside as well. I like it. The bottom is place this card in one adjacent ally's active area and treat it as if they own the card. Shield 1. So we have another shield. So you have potential here to go double shield, Booster Shot and Research the Cure to give 2 shield to somebody. A little bit overkill. You would also be down to 8 cards, which is very kind of real problem maybe. On certain scenarios that would definitely hurt you. So you might not want to do that, but might be a bit overkill, but certainly possible. I think Research the Cure is a very solid card top to bottom. You've got that shielding element there as well. You've got a good attack on the top that is useful and also has the ability to remove those negative conditions. Works quite well with Hold Back the Pain, just being able to attack things for 4. Similar to Hand of the Surgeon, right? Sort of similar kind of way. Does a very similar thing, just doesn't have that XP, but has something tacked on. It's quite nice, I think. So Research the Cure, I think, is a good overall card. That shield 1 on the bottom, though, might be the deciding factor here. Especially if you've kept Booster Shot in, you may want to go Research the Cure just because you want to sort of keep this action going. Like maybe you don't want this action, but you want to keep this action going. The other card is Amputate, which is an attack 4, wound, and immobilize for 1 XP. 86 initiative, and the bottom is Heal 7, but it's range 1 and stun. So this will stun whoever you decide to heal, which can be mitigated by this character, right? You've got things like Research the Cure. Unfortunately, we don't have access to both of them right now, but you have things like Curative Mixture, which can actually negate this downside, but it is something that you will then have to respond to. There's very rarely going to be instances when players are going to be fine with being stunned. I'm thinking towards the end of a room, then they probably won't care if you stun them towards the end of a room. If a character is planning to long rest the next turn, that's a perfect opportunity to stun them because they aren't planning on playing any cards anyway. It's probably a better downside really to the blood transfusion, I would say, because blood transfusion that suffer 2 damage on the top, it takes the top action up, and also potentially you won't be able to play it because of the 2 damage. Whereas Amputate bottom, I think you can mitigate that, and you can mitigate it on a future round. You can even mitigate on a future round or immediately if you wanted to. You could heal somebody up really, really quickly, right? If you were to use Curative Mixture and Amputate, you heal them for 7, then you heal them for another 3, and you remove the stun. I mean, that's huge amount of healing in a single turn. 11 health, there you go, off you go, and take your turn. Amputate, I think, is actually very sneaky good. And I like the top as well. I think the attack 4 with the wound and the immobilize is good. A little bit of an upgrade to Bloody Saw here. The only problem with Bloody Saw is the 25 initiative is much better than the 86 initiative. So if your plan is to use Hold Back the Pain and Bloody Saw together, 25 initiative will most of the time get the job done if you wanted to do it in a early in a round. Whereas if you wanted to use Amputate, then you're looking at 57 initiative. Between these two cards, I think it's actually very close here. I think it's very close between these two cards. It's going to come down to personal preference really on whether or not you want the shield. Personally, I always lean towards Research the Cure. Don't know why. I think I just like the attack 4 on the top. I think it's decent. I don't think that this is potentially enough with the 86 initiative to push it over the edge. I always generally end up going with earlier initiatives in a tie-break kind of situation. And this is sort of a tie-break situation for me with these two. I think either of them are strong and solid choices. I think I will probably end up going with Amputate though here for this time, just for a bit of fun. Just because I always seem to go with Research the Cure. I don't know why, but I'm going to challenge myself because I actually think that this is incredibly close. And Amputate, I think, is a decent card and has some good use. It's just a shame about the initiative, but I think it has some good use. The card we're going to be getting rid of here is Hand of the Surgeon. I don't really want to mess too much with some of our earlier initiative cards like Bloody Saw. I think if you're playing the campaign as well, having a loot card is never a bad thing, just in your back pocket, ready to go for certain scenarios. I think Hand of the Surgeon, this is obviously a huge upgrade in terms of what it does on the top. On the bottom, I would argue is also a huge upgrade, and we want to keep that combo potentially of Curative Mixture top with Amputate bottom. I think it's just very strong. Quite a simple swap here. We're not losing out too much on initiative, 62 to 86. It is a real kind of change, but at least with this, we can guarantee that we will probably end up going last most of the time. So Hand of the Surgeon out and Amputate in. Okay, on to level 6. So at level 6, we have Euthanize and we have Prescription. Now, Euthanize first. The top is kill one adjacent normal enemy with at least 2 negative conditions. And here we get our payoff. Level 6 is where we get our very powerful card. Euthanize top is just insane. And you should immediately be thinking of the synergy with Syringe. So the bottom of Syringe, attack 1, poison and stun. That's 2 negative conditions on initiative 15. And then Euthanize, we have 2 negative conditions. We can just immediately kill them. So the combination of these two cards together is nuts. That's a 1-turn kill, which not many characters can do. Usually they have to plan further forward if that's something that they want to do. The fact that we can do it, we do, I guess, have to make the plan to at least be next to the enemy at the beginning of the turn, right? Because there is no move on this. So that is something to maybe consider. But being able to maybe do that in a single turn, that's really powerful. Very strong combination of 2 cards. 27 initiative on the card itself doesn't really matter when we're playing it with Syringe, but the bottom of this card is also insanely good. I mean, this card is just incredible value. Attack 1, poison, wound, and stun on the bottom. So even if you're dealing with an elite enemy, this card has huge amounts of value. It's not often that you get a character that has an amazing top and an amazing bottom. Like, you could play this for either of the top or bottom and you'd be incredibly happy, I think. So Euthanize is also another good bottom effect to use with our hamstring. You know, we move in, we immobilize ourselves. Well, we don't really care because we've got stuns, we've got poisons, we've got all these cool stuff going on the bottom of our cards too. So Euthanize, excellent card. It's going to need an incredibly good card to be able to beat this, and unfortunately Prescription is not it. So Prescription is give all adjacent allies 1 medical pack ability card. So this is the kind of full version of the medical pack ability for you. This is giving all of the allies 1 rather than just 1. So up to this point in time, we've just been giving 1 out at a time. With this ability, we can give out a lot in a single action, which is definitely worthwhile. But again, it's a scalable ability. Isn't going to work very well in a 2-player party. 3-player party, a little bit better. 4-player party, best. 6 initiative is very good. Again, early initiative on these cards that give ability cards out. Med packs out. I think that's important, having that early initiative to be able to give the med packs out. And the bottom is give all adjacent allies 1 large medical pack instead. As I've said before, I really do not think that the large medical packs are worth what they do. It's a bit of a better initiative. It's a bit of a better heal. It's really not great value. I think you just want to to give people a card to play, not as their leading initiative, but a card that they can just use as just something to use as a vanilla move too, or just for that heal if they need it. Very easy choice for us here. Euthanize, incredibly powerful card. Snapping the game's hand off for this one. Euthanize, easy pick. So we have a few options here of cards we might consider taking out. We have Curative Mixture as a card that we could potentially take out, but it does work very, very well with the bottom of Amputate. Depends if you end up finding yourself playing the top or bottom of Amputate regularly. You've also got Bloody Sore, which is still kind of kicking around, and it's probably lost most of its value at this point in time. Even if you're using it with this, it's probably a little bit underwhelming still, but I still like the fact that the initiative value is good here. You may want to get initiative boots on this character, so if you've got ways to improve your initiative through boosts of speed or boosts of quickness, then I think that is something that this character can consider, and it certainly mitigates some of the downside of losing the initiative of 25 on Bloody Sore, I think. For me, I'm actually going to be swapping out Bloody Sore here, and I'm going to be putting in Euthanize. I want to keep Hold Back the Pain because the bottom of this, I think, will work very well with the top of Amputate still. Will still work quite well with the top of Hamstring if we really want to do that too. There's still some side use, as well as the heal is also quite useful. We also have a card coming up that actually Hold Back the Pain will work very, very well with too. So I'm going to holding on to this card because I've got a card that I'm very excited to use it with a bit later. Okay, on to level 7. Okay, so at level 7, we have Master Physician and we have Surgeon's Satchel. So Master Physician, before your next 6 heal abilities, remove all negative conditions on the heal targets. So this is kind of like removes that downside that I said I didn't really like with Curative Mixture, right? So it's like, I really didn't like the fact that this did the removal negative conditions after the heal. Well, this does it before the heal. That's actually pretty nice. But is this really worth a burn? At level 7, I would say no, because most of the time, this is only really going to be good against poison. Everything else kind of just ends up either being removed easily through other means or just not really that impactful. The bottom is add +4 heal to all of your heal actions this round. More heal again. I think that this card is just a bit too overkill. This character has the best suite of healing cards compared to any character in the game. Absolutely does. However, heal is just one of the weaker abilities in the game. It's just a matter of fact. Surgeon Satchel is loot 1, heal 2, affect all adjacent allies. That's our loot action on the top, so at least it's very useful for looting purposes. And the heal 2 is not too bad, although kind of a little bit tacked on and a bit weird in a way. Obviously, if this was just a loot 1 action on the top at level 7, you'd be like, this is terrible. Why does this exist? It's just not very good. The bottom is move 4, give 1 adjacent ally 1 medical pack ability card and 10 initiative. Now that is, I think, what we want. So we want the ability to be able to give these medical packs out, but at the moment, in order to give a medical ability pack out, we are having to give up an action somewhere along the line, right? We're either having to give up an attack here with the top, or we're having to give up a move here with precaution on the bottom. Now this allows us to move potentially into a nice position or move towards an ally to give them that pack. It just makes giving the packs out easier, but also giving you a decent move forward. I mean, you don't necessarily even have to give the ability, the medical pack card out, right? You could just move 4 and that's still okay. So out of these two, I think it's a pretty clear choice that the Surgeon Satchel is the better of the 2 cards. So we're going to be taking Surgeon Satchel here. You could, for example, maybe consider going back and taking a different card here. Maybe going back and taking Research the Cure if you really wanted to. I think that there's definitely some opportunity here at level 7 because these cards, both of them, are not the most glamorous of cards, but I think Surgeon Satchel just combines a card for us into a nice usable package. So we're going to be taking that. So the card we want to swap out is probably either going to be Precaution or it's going to be First Aid. Completely up to you. If you found you being able to move and then give the First Aid card, so for example with Surgeon Satchel, if we were to keep First Aid, that still gives us the double medical pack kind of turn in a much cleaner way than with Precaution. However, you may have also found, though, that actually I quite like having Precaution because I want to do an attack and I want to give it a medical ability pack on the same turn because I've immobilized myself with Hamstring, right? So you can make arguments for either of the two. Personally, I really like just having the ability of the double medical pack turn. Just in my back pocket, something that I can use when needed. If we're getting towards the end of a room or an ally is struggling and they really need some extra stamina because they are flagging, then this is something that we can do. So I'm actually going to be taking out Precaution, even though it was a level 2 card, keeping in First Aid so that we can basically do that double medical pack turn if we really want to. And that can be very impactful to do that at some point during the game. Okay, on to level 8. Okay, so level 8, we have Bedside Manna and we have Gentleman's Anger. So Bedside Manna is a heal 3, range 1. Remove all negative conditions on the healed target and give them 1 large medical ability card. 2 XP and a burn. Yep, another kind of fairly inefficient card, unfortunately. This character just does not really care about the large medical pack. I'm sorry, but I just don't think that the value is there. So as before, we are pretty much just going to ignore anything that says large medical pack on it if it's a burn. If it was a non-burn, I think the conversation would be much, much different. We will definitely be skipping this, and just adding the heal onto the top does not make it better, unfortunately. Or removing all the negative conditions does also not make it better. The ordering of this is weird again. You know, it's the same ordering as Curative Mixture. So, yeah. Sorry, it's basically Curative Mixture, except that we get a large medical pack out of the deal, and that's not worth a burn, in my opinion. 5 initiative is very good, though, so that is decent. So if the bottom is usable, maybe we can still use this card. The bottom is move 2. 1 adjacent ally may recover up to 2 of their discarded cards. Now, that is actually very decent, and with certain combinations of characters that can loop another set of cards another period of time. The most broken thing you can do really in Gloomhaven, or some of the most broken things you can do, is looping cards constantly. The bottom definitely rescues a terrible top, in my opinion. The next card is Gentleman's Anger, and though this is a card though that I was alluding to a little bit earlier with Hold Back the Pain. This is an attack 5 disarm, 1 XP. Very, very strong. Disarm, never going to be sad to see disarm, right? And attack 5 tagged onto it as well. This could do some decent damage. We're liking that. 29 initiative, not great, not terrible, just sort of okay. Not early as early as we'd like, of course. And the bottom is an attack 3, range 5. So you've got a decent attack there. Also, another action on the bottom there that potentially, if we are hamstrung and we are immobilized, then we still have something we could maybe do with the bottom of our action. So I like the bottom of Gentleman's Anger as well. The reason why I love this card so much, though, is because of this combo with Hold Back the Pain. If we can use a pair of boots to maybe go early, and we can attack 3, 4 enemies with this, disarm them all, attack them all for 5, that is great value. That is a big, splashy, impactful play. I'm all about the big, splashy, impactful plays. So I am definitely taking Gentleman's Anger here. Hands down, easily for me. I just really like the interaction with Hold Back the Pain. Love it. Easy pickup for me here with Gentleman's Anger. But I don't think you can discount Bedside Manna. I think the bottom is actually sneaky good. And if you are trying to enable another character, I don't think you can understate how powerful the bottom of this card is in enabling another character. But we are taking Gentleman's Anger. So now we're getting towards the end of our character progression. We're level 8, we're getting up to level 9. Now we can really start to pick and choose whatever it is that we really want. I think I'm going to be taking out Curative Mixture here. It's been doing work for us and certainly has some great potential with Amputate. Still has some really good combos with that. So it's not a card maybe you want to just completely throw away forever with that 19 initiative. But I think we'd like to focus a little bit more on damage now. We're going to try and get in there. We're going to try and do some damage. We're going to try and actually be that frontliner attacking character, really. Really embrace the combat side of the combat medic of this character. So we're going to get rid of Curative Mixture and we're going to put in Gentleman's Anger so that we can keep that Hold Back the Pain combo going. And we still have a heal ability here in Hold Back the Pain if we really need it. And we also have plenty of ways of giving people medical packs or potentially doing a little bit of side heals here and there. So we're not completely disregarding that element of the character, but we're definitely feeling a little bit stronger and a little bit more like an aggressive character. Okay, on to level 9. So at level 9, we have Prep for Surgery and we have Grisly Trauma. And I have to say that out of most of the guides that I have done about level 9 cards, this one might be one of the hardest ones to choose. And I think you can make very good arguments for both of these cards. So prep for surgery first, which is all of your attack and move abilities may be performed as heal abilities of an equal value +1. In such cases, the range is 1 unless otherwise specified, and ignore all conditions applied by the attack abilities. Makes sense. You don't want to wound your allies or something like that. This is nuts, really, when you think about it. This just completely blows the playstyle of the character out of the water. It puts everything into overdrive. Up to this point, we've had to be making the conscious decision. Do we want to bring our healing cards? Do we want to bring our attacking cards? How do we want to play this character? How much of the combat of this character do we want to bring in? How much of the healing do we want to bring in? And you've been walking this line. This card just says, do you know what? Don't worry about it. Just bring all of your cards with the biggest values. Just don't worry about it. This gives you a lot of flexibility, like a ridiculous amount of flexibility. More flexibility, I think, than any other character ever gets, really. It's kind of similar, I guess, in a weird way to the Brute, because the Brute gets his movable phalanx. Is it a movable phalanx? The one where they can basically treat their movement as attack. So there's some similarities to that, but this is +1 as well, and so most of our attacks are like an attack 4 or attack 5, right? This is just super good. And our moves as well, suddenly even hamstring suddenly turns into a heal 7 on the bottom if you really want it, and that I think is pretty insane. The only reservation to it, as I've said before, is that healing is just not as good as dealing damage, so we're giving up doing damage to do healing, and that is explicitly what is happening here. But I think this gives you so much potential to refresh your team between rooms that, I mean, maybe it's worth taking just for that. But it's certainly a lot of fun. I'll give it that. Certainly a lot of fun. The bottom is move 3, stun, target one adjacent enemy. Also amazing. Just being able to just stun something. I guess it's a bit vanilla for level 9. You could argue that it's fairly vanilla, and there are other characters who have better things than this at level 9. But this is still very solid. It's still incredibly solid, and you're still going to use it, and you're not going to complain. And it would still be an upgrade on the cards that you currently have in certain spots. So prep for surgery, really, really cool card. Very thematic. Really, really like it. The other card, though, is Grisly Trauma, which is also pretty excellent. So kill all normal or elite enemies in the targeted area suffering from 10 or more damage. Range 3, 1 XP. So this one is good, but also kind of a bit awkward in different ways. Grisly Trauma, I've enjoyed playing with this card. As for my builds that I've been playing recently, I've been taking Grisly Trauma, and I've been enjoying it, but I have actually found the top to not be as usable as you would think, for a couple of reasons. The first one being that if you're in a party where you are level 9, but the rest of your team is maybe just reset their mercenaries, so maybe they're much lower level than you, maybe they're level 2, level 3, then actually elites will have a lot less health. It's the clause here of having to have suffered 10 damage is the tricky part, because some elites might only have 15 health. At that point in time, well, is this even really that worth it? Actually, I would much rather just do an attack 5 instead of trying to pull this off. Now, this is nice because it just kills them without having to draw attack modifiers. That is definitely a good bonus here. Whenever you can kill something without having to draw an attack modifier, that is huge, because you just don't want to accidentally miss or draw -1s, -2s, or whatever. Stuff can happen. They might have shield, for example, gets through shield. There's lots of things that actually works quite well, but it's the suffering from 10 or more damage, which means you have to have already attacked them, or your team has to have already started to attack them, that makes it a little bit more awkward in my experience. If you're playing on max party level with all max mercenaries, then if you're fighting against an elite cave bear, for example, they have a crazy amount of health. So this can, for example, do a lot of work and actually kill something that's on 20 odd health, and that's decent. I'm starting to lean back towards prep for surgery personally, because I just found the top to be just not as usable as you would like, or you would assume at least. The bottom is quite good here though, which is move 2, poison, wound, and muddle, target all adjacent enemies. And again, as with your other stuff, this is going to be good at all junction. Poison, wound, and muddle. 81 initiative is not great for this kind of thing. It would be nice to move in early to poison and wound them. You could always pair this with a nice pair of boots potentially and use prevention as key. So have 13 initiative and then maybe use this with a nice pair of boots. Get in there, poison, wound and muddle a load of enemies and disarm them. So we've kind of got all of the negative effects on them at that point in time. That is a very strong use of this card. I think you are really in for a very, very tough decision here. You can make an argument the prep for surgery top doesn't really do enough because it's changing attacks into heals, which is suboptimal, but the bottom is very, very strong. Grizzly Trauma, I think you can make an argument that the top doesn't do enough because in certain situations, it just doesn't really do anything either. So it's a difficult choice, but I think both cards are legitimate choices. I am probably going to end up going with Grizzly Trauma, just in the spirit of the fact that we are trying to kill things as quick as possible. That is our build here. We are the combat medic, and I think that's what we want to do. In Prep for Surgery, you could argue is the most combat medic-y card that you can possibly get because it turns one of your attacks and moves into heals, but I think Grizzly Trauma is probably my pick here. So I'm going to be taking Grizzly Trauma, but absolutely just pick whichever card you think is going to be the most fun to play with your character. So taking a card out at level 9 is always really going to be more situational than anything else. I think you could make an argument to take out something like Surgeon's Satchel if you really wanted to go all in on the damage instead. You can make an argument to actually get rid of Amputate because it's just another attack, and perhaps you just want to use Grizzly Trauma top instead of the top of Amputate. Perhaps you haven't been using the bottom. So really just make your own decisions here on what you would like to do. The only card I would say to not get rid of really is Prevention is Key, is still very good. And Syringe, obviously, with Euthanize is a really nice 2-card combination. So you're always going to struggle to get rid of those. You could get rid of Hold Back the Pain if you are not using this anymore. So there's some options for you there. Personally, I think just for the sake of argument, I will get rid of Amputate, but really there's so many choices here. You're really going to be taking the cards that fit right for you and your playstyle and the scenario that you're playing. Okay, great. Let's take a look at perks. So perks for this character are pretty straightforward. You're going to want to go with consistency first and remove those -1s. This is a character that does a lot of attacking, so realistically you want to try and get your attack modifier deck to be pretty good at drawing attack modifiers. Next, I would go for Heighten. Unfortunately, this character has no way to remove the -2 or the -1. Next, I would consider probably going for Dust to just remove the -1s, or you could start considering going for the +1 Immobilize or the Rolling Wounds and Stuns. I think these are actually pretty good on this character because you have lots of opportunities to attack multiple things in a turn. So being able to add potentially Stun or Wound to that. I mean, Stun is a little bit of a... Stun is sometimes sort of a bit of a doubling down, right? Because if you're using Gentleman's Anger, you're disarming enemies anyway. Do you really care about Stun at that point? Probably not. Realistically, Stun is not so good, but I would say Rolling Wound is very good because it means that you don't have to maybe bank on that Bloody Sore quite as much, and maybe you could use something else. So we're going to go for Rolling Bloodletting first. I think then it makes sense to just do Dust. I think Artifice is a really worthwhile perk to pick up actually, because you can often just cycle a really good stamina potion or a really good earring item, something like that. This is very good on this character to be able to do. So if you keep your deck nice and lean and you can draw this hopefully once per rest cycle, actually can get some really good value out of it. Then I think in the spirit of trying to keep your deck lean because you actually do want to try and hit this, I think you would want to go for Knack or for Blind. I think Knack is very good. Just adding extra damage into your deck is always good. You could also consider maybe going for Rejuvenate here, especially if you find yourself getting attacked a lot yourself. The difference between Stun and Rejuvenate here is pretty marginal really, because often you're going to be controlling up enemies anyway using your actual cards that have Stun on them or your cards that have Disarm on them. So I can absolutely just see you spending your final kind of perk really on something like this. You will have additional perks too. I haven't got this character completely maxed out, but I think Rejuvenate and Stun, I would actually stay away from these +1 immobilizers. I like keeping this deck nice and lean with a lot of rolling cards so that we can try and hit this card in particular very regularly. So by adding more cards, we're actually sort of decreasing our chance of hitting this. Rolling cards don't really affect that, so I think that's really cool. I like to keep the decks nice and thin. So we're going to be going for Rejuvenate here with our last perk, but if you have additional perks, I think both Rejuvenate and Blind are worthwhile. Okay, let's take a look at items. So for your head slot item, you're going to have a few different kind of decisions really to make here on what you want to try and do. I think Eagle Eye Goggles is not a bad pickup for this character, considering that you have lots of potential multi-target attacks, and to try and make sure that you get the best value out of that, try and miss that -2 and try and miss that miss as well, I think is pretty useful. Iron Helm is not bad item for this character, considering that you are going to be on the front a lot, so it's a cheap item that actually does something for you. I also really like Mask of Terror, because one thing this character can struggle with is Retaliate, because all of your abilities are just melee attacks, and Retaliate is an issue for this character. Mask of Terror helps to solve that Retaliate issue so that you can push them away so you don't suffer that. I think that can be very good. Powerful items like Empowering Talisman to be able to get back stamina potions. Pendant of Darpax, again, to be able to get back them, because quite often you don't necessarily care about the curses as well. And yes, they are a little bit annoying, but realistically, you're pretty happy because you're attacking lots of things all the time. So this character doesn't care too much about that. But those are the kind of items that I would be looking at for your head slot items. For your body, I think you would probably be looking at a Cloak of Invisibility, to be honest. A lot of the time you get yourself into trouble. So you run in and you end up kind of just being in an awkward position, especially with hamstring. You jump in, you get hamstrung, so then you can't move away, and potentially the enemy can just start attacking you, and that can be a bit of an issue. So sometimes you do catch yourself out with this character quite a bit because of that aggressive movement and that immobilize. Cloaks of Invisibility, not bad items for this character. Studded Leather, as you can see I've got here, is also not bad to just give you a little bit of extra kind of survivability. I don't think it's too bad. Cloak of Phasing, Blink Cape, very good on this character too. I don't think I have it on this save at the moment, but on Blinking Cape is also incredibly strong item, because that means that you can actually don't even care to do the syringe euthanize combo. You can just Blinking Cape, move next to the person, syringe, euthanize, done. Very clean, very effective. You obviously can't equip armor items, which is a bit of a downside, being a frontliner, not being able to equip these. So really you're just going to be looking at survivability things, or things that can help you combo. For hand items, you definitely want to be looking at cool hand items that can give you either multi-target AoEs or extend your reach somewhat. So Battle Axe here will actually change your single target attack into 2. This is really good with stuns or with disarms, right? All of your stuns or your bottom stuns are attacks. So this would actually allow you to stun 2 things, which is just super value, super value. So really recommend melee items that can give you additional targets. Long Spear is probably one of the best uses of this because it's reusable. However, the pattern can sometimes be a little bit tricky. The best version of this really is, I don't think I have it here on this save yet, but that is Halberd. So if you can get yourself a Halberd item, which allows you to extend the range of your melee attacks from range 1 to range 2, your single targets, that is insanely good, because then you can just start to just attack things and not even care about moving. But I think Long Spear is a really good item to shoot for with this character. For your feet, I would really consider Boots of Speed early on, because you're going to want to increase or decrease your initiative quite regularly depending on what the enemy does. You put yourself in a bit of a dangerous position if you want to try and set up that Hold Back the Pain Bloody Saw combo. 25 on Bloody Saw is not an amazing initiative for that, so maybe you might consider wanting to go a little bit early or maybe a little bit later depending on what you want to do with that. So there's definitely some good use with Boots of Speed. So that gets upgraded to Boots of Swiftness later on, of Quickness, sorry. You could also just consider something with Jump, so any kind of jumping boots would also be very good early game, because these will also allow you to get that hamstring and then go and get in. So potentially you can use that. You could also enhance jump on hamstring. Plus movement boots are good and will help you land that prevention is key at times, but I would say probably you're not really in need of those early on in the game, I would say. For your small items, it's pretty much all of the broken items again for this character. That's what you're going to want. But actually there's one item that I don't think I have here yet, because I haven't unlocked it on this save, but Cure Potions. So Cure Potions can be very nice on the Sawbones, because that will allow you to remove that hamstring, that immobilized from hamstring. Probably one of the only characters that I would really recommend that potion for. But yeah, Minor Cure Potion, very good. Obviously Stamina Potions, excellent on this character, being able to repeat those stuns, those disarms, really what you want to be doing. Definitely want to get yourself some earrings. I don't think I have too many here. I have one. Here we go, Star Earring. You definitely want Star Earring. You probably might even consider using sort of like Rings of Haste, because this allows you to play 2 bottoms in a turn, which can be quite good for you, or Vitality to play 2 tops in a turn. Again, the items that are broken on other characters are still broken here, and because you have the ability to maybe draw that refresh item card from your attack modifier deck, then you can certainly get multiple uses out of some of these values. So yeah, definitely ones to look out for there. Okay, so let's look at enhancements. So for enhancements, there's a couple of really easy, simple ones to recommend. Hamstring, putting Jump on the bottom of Hamstring is very good value for 75 gold here. I think this works really, really well. It means you don't have to worry about those winged shoes if you want them. It means that you're always going to be able to get where you want to go, pretty much. And that's invaluable in my experience. So jump on hamstring is probably always going to be the first enhancement that I would recommend. Next, you can look at actually putting strengthen here on the bottom of do no harm at level 4. It's expensive, 125 gold, but it allows you to strengthen yourself before you go and do one of your decent attacks on the next round, because you're going to be strengthened for 2 full rounds. So this will give you the ability to strengthen yourself, maybe do an attack. Then on the next round, you get in and you go for that big hold back the pain kind of combo with something else like Gentleman's Anger. So it really does do a lot of work for you as somebody who does a lot of melee attacks. So strengthen on yourself is very good for 125 gold. And potentially the cheesiest one that you can possibly go for is on prevention is key. You can add curse to this, you can add wound to this, you can add poison to this. Adding curse to this is pretty nasty, I think. This character doesn't have any access to curse outside of an enhancement possibility. So yeah, just being able to just disarm them, then curse them, and then on the next round, they've got a chance to just miss again because they've got a load of curses in their deck. Yeah, it's pretty nasty. It's pretty cheesy. Definitely something that there's a bit of an oversight here. Don't think this ability really should have had the option to enhance. That's for sure. So yeah, curse, wound, or poison on any of these things here is just very good value on prevention is key. Well, there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed the guide. It's been a long time making, and this is a bit of a cathartic experience for me doing the last character guide for Gloomhaven. I still would maybe like to revisit some of the earlier ones that I've done to kind of bring them up to the kind of same standard as some of these later ones that I've done. But now there is a guide out there for every single character. So hope you enjoyed this series. I will be, of course, doing some more content around the characters. That doesn't mean that it's all finished. Also, we're going to have lots of Frosthaven characters, Jaws the Lion characters people want me to talk about. So I'm sure this isn't the last of the complete kind of character guide series. I'm sure of that. If you got this far, thank you so much for watching this video. Consider tossing in a like if you did enjoy it. It does help me out so much on the YouTube algorithm nowadays. Really helps me push the video out to more people, and hopefully more people can see the content, and hopefully more people will find it useful. So I really appreciate it. And as always, come and follow me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/ManageRequest every Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday. Come hang out, play Gloomhaven, talk Gloomhaven. Yep, any questions you might have, come and ask me live. Well then, I'm off for a well-earned rest, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.
I think so. Yeah.
That's the blessing from Jam. That's the blessing from.
Isaac, at this point, can we get your approval to add an additional attack modifier deck for allies in the digital?